Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
I'm not a good pretender, I never could live a lie. I said too much, and let it get the best of me, until it took the rest of me. I thought it was worth the fight, to fight for what's right, to right all the wrongs, to sing in our songs, to know we belong. No one understands, they don't have the desire, got the legs in the fire, and I do it again. We give it all we can, all we have is desire, got the legs in the fire, we burn and still say never say, never say, never say, never again. I never say, never say, never say, never again. I learned more from one enemy than from 1,000 friends. That heaven takes care of the fools and scoundrels in the end. Yeah, I learned more from one lie than from 1,000
Welcome home.
truths.
You just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I'm your host, Mr. Rob G, and tonight we're broadcasting to you on the terrestrial affiliates across North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, KPNL, and Odyssey Radio. Remember, you can access our archives for free at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio, at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SOR Newswire, get some official Spaced Out swag, plus rock out to some Bumblefoot and oh so much more. Welcome to the show tonight, after hours on a Sunday. And as a lot of you know, this will be the last show that we do prior to this break that we're going to take. So let's make it an awesome show, everybody. Let's go ahead and jump out into the chat and see who has joined us here tonight. Who's in there? Who's the first one? We can pretty much say who it usually is. I didn't check my email for Race Fan, but it's Race Fan with the gold. We got Deb from Sacramento with the silver coming on in, and then to Mothman. Hey, buddy, good to see you. Coming in with that bronze, saying good evening right back to you. Deb from Sacramento saying, sweet Robbie G, any chance of some trivia? I don't know about tonight, Deb. We'll see. Thanks for coming in. Who else do we have? Kitty Catty Whack saying hi, Space Out Radio. How you doing, Kitty Catty Whack? Thanks for coming in and joining us tonight after hours on a Sunday. Who else do we have here? We got Melvin from Mars saying howdy. How's everyone tonight? How you doing, Melvin from Mars? Let's see. We got Penny saying good evening, everyone. Good evening to Penny. Thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you showing up. Who else do we got looking on the list? Looks like we have Ange saying, hey, everyone, Mary Rodwell. This will be a fantastic show. Great guest, Mr. Rob G. Thank you very much, Ange. And this is the second time we've had Mary. So we definitely had an awesome first show. If you missed that, definitely hop into the archives and go and check it out. Who else do we have? We have Lars Jansen coming in saying, good morning, all. Good morning, Lars Jansen. Thanks for coming into the show tonight. We appreciate you showing up. Let's see, who else do we got? Paranormal Pixie Laura saying, good evening, everyone. Good morning, Pixie. We appreciate you showing up to the show tonight. Who else do we have? Gory Tiger. Gory Tiger saying, what's up? What's up, Gory Tiger? Right back to you. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up this evening. We got Cryptid Search saying, hi, everyone. Hi, right back to you, Cryptid Search. Appreciate you showing on up. Who else do we have? Pyridoxine Oxide. LSR Pyridoxine Oxide Alien Documentary. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. Who else do we have? Aloha Dave 13 saying, buenas noches a todo de Mexico. Good evening to everyone from Mexico. Thanks for keeping us bilingual. Aloha Dave, as you always do. Appreciate you showing up tonight. Let's see. Who else do we have? Who else do we have here? JSCO77 saying, hi, everyone. Hi, JSCO77. Thanks for showing up to the show tonight. We appreciate you. Who else do we have? We got Paramar saying, howdy, folks. Howdy, Paramar. Thanks for coming on into the show tonight. We appreciate you showing up. Yes, Paul Damon. This that Wu train? Question mark. Yes, it is. Thanks for coming on in, Paul Damon. We need you here. Appreciate your support. And moving on down. Let's see. Yep. Looks like Jennifer is here saying, hey, Trivia Rob, good to see you again. Yeah, good to see you too, Jennifer. Thanks for coming on in. Also, Wes Decker, W. Decker. Hey there, everybody. Mr. Rob G. Hey, W. Decker. Shout out. Appreciate you coming on in. Excuse me. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for your support. Let's see. Who else do we have? Jorgensen. Salutations, Big Rob. Hey, Jorgensen. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up here to the after hours tonight. Who else do we have? Renee Cruz. Yo, what's up, my UFO blood? funny Renee Cruz in the building, guys. Renee Cruz is in the building. And it looks like we are pretty much caught up. We got Ron J coming on in at the buzzer saying, Robert. Hey, Ron J, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing on up. And now I think we are actually caught up. So, yeah, definitely appreciate you guys coming on into the show this evening. This is the after hours. And you, as we have stated earlier and before, we'll be taking a break here at SOR from July 20th through August the 4th. So the first show back will be August the 5th. So within that time, we'll be restructuring, doing certain things to get the show where we want it to be. Also preparing this show for radio, along with a list of other things that we want to do here. So this will be the last show until, I want to say, August 10th. So want to make this a special show, guys, and definitely want to let you know that I won't be able to contain myself during that time, and I'm sure we'll have to do some sort of live or some sort of interaction. But appreciate everyone coming in this evening for this fantastic show. We do have our guest tonight, Mary Rodwell, who we have had on here before, and Mary Rodwell is the founder and principal of Australian Close Encounter Research Network, or ACERN, which was established in 1997 to provide professional counseling support, hypnotherapy, and information to individuals and their family with anomalous paranormal experiences and abduction. So we'll stop there and we'll get into a great conversation, guys, as we go ahead and bring in our guest for the evening, Mary Rodwell. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Oh, I'm good, Rob. Nice to see you again.
It is great to see you again. Great to see you again. I recently rewatched the first interview that we did. It was fantastic. You were great. So I was like, I can't wait to get back in here and speak with you again. There were some things that we talked about and we didn't really go far into, and kind of some things we may be able to look into today. But first of all, how have you been and what have you been into lately?
Oh, gosh, the weird and the wonderful is my world. So nothing's changed really, other than the fact I'm more busy than I've ever been, which is really saying a lot of people are waking up.
Right. which is a beautiful thing, which goes into your book, Awakening, one of the books that you have written. And I kind of wanted to get into that as well, right? So we talked about the new human and your thought, the term that you created, the new human. If you could kind of reintroduce that to the audience, what that means.
Right. Well, you're one of them, very likely, I would say, Rob, anyway, is that what we're seeing is a lot of the newer generations of human are a lot more aware and awake. In other words, more tuned in to the multiverse or multidimensional realities, even though we're still told by mainstream science, you can only trust your five senses. I think most people realize there's a lot more to it than that, and that we are all actually multidimensional, and your intuition, your knowing, your sensing, your feelings, all of those things are actually tapping into that matrix that show us there's a greater reality than what our five senses are telling us. And with the new human, a lot of those senses, even the physical senses, are enhanced, such as hearing, sense of touch, sense of smell, and what have you. In a lot of the new generations, they're a lot more sensitive, and anyone who's a parent will notice that their children perhaps are demonstrating this because they are a lot more tuned into that until they get it programmed out of them by mainstream education and the way that we understand our reality on this planet.
Yeah. So, and that's I said this before, having a whole generation or whole new generation of individuals being born, pretty much unlocked or with the ability to tap into some of the things that we're just learning about now. Just having that knowledge from the beginning is such a big thing. As far as that goes, where would you, when you say the activation of humanity, what exactly are we talking about there?
Well, let's bring in a bit of the science, in the sense that most people will probably be aware that we're intelligently designed. Even if they're not aware of it, the evidence is there that we went from Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal, and there's a missing link, and suddenly Homo sapiens sapiens turns up with 223 genes that weren't there before and twice the brain size. And there's only one way that can happen, is if there's been some kind of interference. The 223 genes, nobody can say where they came from. All of a sudden, they're part of Homo sapiens sapiens. So a lot of those that are tapped into these star nations that we're connected to are saying that at least 12 inserts from these star intelligences or star beings, some say even as many as 22, have been part of our makeup to become Homo sapiens sapiens. But what is interesting is we only use a small percentage, as far as the scientists are concerned, of our DNA. In other words, maybe 5-10% perhaps is active. They have no idea what the rest of the DNA is there for. And this is what I believe, what they used to call the junk litter, or junk DNA.
Junk DNA, yeah.
Because they don't know what it is. The interesting fact is that 1%, just 1 gram of DNA can hold as much information in all the internet, just 1 gram of DNA. So what on earth are we holding in our DNA that yet they haven't discovered? What I believe is happening is that we are being given the frequencies through a lot of different ways, solar frequencies, planetary frequencies that are being brought in through music, through art, or whatever, that are actually triggering that dormant DNA, which is our connection to these star visitors, which is our connection to our galactic heritage, if you like. And that's this awakening where people are suddenly finding themselves maybe doing a shamanic exercise, or maybe having a near-death experience, or maybe having energy healing, or maybe seeing a UFO and feeling different afterwards. It's because many times when somebody says they've seen a UFO, I'll say, did you feel different afterwards? And they'll say, yeah, I started to get really interested in astrophysics, or very interested in a certain type of maths or whatever, which is part of the way they're activating. And so when we talk about activation of the older models of human, these are the many ways it's happening. But the young ones are being brought in, many of them already activated, already aware of where they come from. And I'm talking to them all the time. And only recently I talked to a little 7-year-old girl who explains that she's part human, part blue avian being, and that's her family, and that she's a healer, and she's activating healing in those that she heals. In other words, as she's doing the healing, which is activating their DNA to heal themselves. So that's the kind of extraordinary information that's coming through in this whole thing that we're looking at, which is, so what is activation? It's the DNA. It's the DNA being that we have that's been dormant, I believe, that is now being activated so that we can start accessing our true potential.
Yeah, and I talked about this recently with Deb Shakti, and we kind of talked about, you know, how when you're born, you're way more open to all sorts of different things. Like the world is, you know, there's no limit to what you might be able to achieve. That's the mindset that you have as a child until you get put into this societal system where it seems to like suppress those things. So when I say that, I'm just saying that, is it possible that we've always been born unlocked and we just, you know, the going into these societies that we go into kind of suppress those abilities? Because it seems like that's what it's set up for.
I think to a certain extent, we can access all of this without the activation. But I think that what's happened is there is a lot still that we can't access. And whether or not that's the co-creators of Homo sapiens sapiens decided little by little we'll slowly unlock them, because we don't want them to get too clever too soon until they're mature enough spiritually. And I think this is why it's happened in the way it has, because with that kind of activation, you've got to be spiritually mature, because otherwise you're not going to use your abilities for the right intent, or maybe the good intent. You may get carried away and perhaps go in another direction. So I think they've been very careful about how much they give us in terms, or how much they activate in us. But the new ones coming in are coming in with that maturity, with that awareness. And I think that's been deliberate. These, you know, let's look at it as a, you know, a soul journey. And the soul journey is to come to this planet and bring your skills and awareness to assist with this activation of humanity into a whole new paradigm, and a whole new beginning, a new earth, as many call it, where we can actually be truly who we are. My understanding is that these star nations want us to join the galactic community, but we've got to be mature, spiritually mature to do that. And you know what? We're not doing a very good job at the moment, because we still think that if I disagree with you, I'm going to knock you off or kill you or blow you up or something or other. So we've got a bit to do yet in getting into the right frequency, I think, of honoring the fact that we're all the same and we're all important, and get away from all the judgments and limits that we've placed, that have been placed on us in this planet, with which divide rather than, you know, get us to connect.
Now, is the activation of humanity, is that the same thing as what some people say is starseed activation? Is that essentially the same thing?
Absolutely. It's different names. And, you know, whatever name you give it, the ascension is another part of this. What it's really saying is that we're reaching a certain maturity, or at least the souls that are coming in you know, in greater numbers each generation now, are coming in with the awareness and the spiritual insight to actually change this planet, to actually turn it around. And this is why they've come. And they are, we're all star seeds, because we, you know, we didn't just originate on this planet. We are part of this planet, but we're also part of many of the systems that have joined in to create Homo sapiens sapiens. And whether or not you see that as Pleiadians, those from Sirius or Andromeda or whatever, there are numerous star systems that have added their DNA and created this wonderful mix of talented souls that have come in to assist with their awareness. And when you talk to children who say they can communicate with animals or plants, for example, I know of a veterinary surgeon that tells me that she can communicate with the animals that are brought to her, and pass on the messages to the owners about what the animals are saying. Wow. She also says when the animals pass on, or the pets pass on, she can communicate with them and bring in the information to the owners as well. Now, this is a veterinary surgeon talking about this. So this isn't just geared to, I know many want to say, oh, you know, the weird and the wonderful on this planet. Well, actually, it's everyday people that are finding out they have these abilities but are often denied by mainstream because nobody really wants to believe that you can still do that. And of course, this is what this awakening is about. Yes, you can. In fact, it's possible for all of us to do the same things.
Wow. I mean, it's a powerful concept, and it's definitely the path that we have to go. Do you see what would be some of the hurdles that you see coming up, between us and getting to that ascension point? What would be some of the things that we deal with in daily life that would be considered hurdles?
Well, the interesting thing that we've noticed when we did the surveys of this 4,200 people in the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation survey, with the 4,200 people, 85% of them admitted they had a psycho-spiritual transformation. And by that, I mean everything in their perspective changed in terms of how they understood their world and their philosophy. And that meant that they were more tapped into ecology, more tapped into living a more holistic lifestyle, wanting to honor all sentience and connected to everything, wanting to even change their diet, losing interest in materialistic avenues and venues of earning money no longer meant anything to them. So this huge spiritual shift into a non-materialistic reality was what happened. And so what it really means, it's a threat to the present paradigm, of course, because as we bail from that, who's going to do the work and do what, the old system wants of us? Because I believe we're programmed to be servants to a system. So when people say, well, I'm not going to be part of that anymore, don't want to know, not interested in, the new TV, or I'm not interested in getting the latest car, or I'm not interested in going that way anymore, there's going to be a big collapse of that society because people are just not buying into it anymore. We're already seeing it to a certain extent. More and more people leaving the cities and wanting a more holistic lifestyle, buying a little plot of land and growing their own food, for example, and saying, I don't want to be part of this system anymore. But that means those that want the system are struggling to say, well, we need you to run our factories. We need you to do this. We need you to be consumers. We need all of that. So in the end, it's going to collapse the system if it carries on like this, which is no loss, as many of us will already say, is because we've lost the plot a little bit anyway, because the system really isn't about humanity and the best of humanity at the moment. It's about a certain corporate need to control everyone. Everybody knows this. This isn't tin hat conspiracy stuff anymore. I mean, people know that we're being controlled into a certain system that creates the people that will be willing to do all of this stuff and not think about their future, not think about the quality of life, not think about their spirituality. All of the stuff that, in fact, this so-called pandemic did was get people thinking and saying, do you know what? Not really enjoying my life. What am I doing? What am I doing in my life? Chasing and running for what? So I finally own my own home when I'm 75 and nearly dead. Really great. What's the point of all of that? So it's actually worked in a really beautiful way for that reason, because it's given people a chance to think and reappraise their life and say, do you know what? I don't want a part of that anymore. And people are leaving the system. So there's going to be a lot going on, I think, where people are changing. And as they're changing, the system's going to, I think, collapse. And we're going to get a completely different thing going on. That's what I think we've all come for.
Yeah. Catastrophic disclosure. That's what it sounds like to me. That's what I consider it to be. And just like you just said, though, there's going to be for sure a negative impact. Well, I won't say negative, but probably there'll be a rough period. There'll be a rough period that we will have to go through in rebuilding, what it is that we really want. And it's just, I talked to Dave Scott about this a few weeks back, and he was like, well, it was one of the things that would scare you about that. And it's just the fact that we will have to go through a rebuilding period where we're figuring things out. And that you kind of went into the question I wanted to ask you, because I know we talked, and you talked about limited disclosure and the government's unwillingness to disclose. And you kind of touched on some of those things, but I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the reasons, like full blown out, what are the reasons that the government wants limited disclosure, which I think takes 50 to 100 more years to come anyways?
Well, they say anything from 30, they're 30 years ahead in technology and what have you. It's probably a lot more than that. So much is being hidden from the rest of society. And I do think there's a breakaway society which incorporates all of this technology that we don't know about, that's kept from the public. But we've got things like free energy. We've got things like certain technologies for healing, for example. They call them the med beds or whatever. Free energy is going to be a big one. And all these other technologies, anti-gravity vehicles, all this kind, our whole planet would be transformed. And everything we do would be different if we had this technology. The trouble is, there are too many stakes in what we're doing now. And it's like when Tesla was showing that you could get electricity without the wires, and them saying, well, we can't monitor that. Therefore, that's no good. We want to make money as much as possible out of everything that we give them. So, of course, that never came to fruition. Of course, they have all of this. They have all of Tesla's technology. So the free energy is a big one. Can you imagine what it would be like if everyone on the planet had a little bit of technology that's, about this big, they pay a few $100 for or $100 for, and it gives them the ability to have free energy for everything in their home or whatever for the rest of their lives. Just think about how that alone, and this is without all the medical technology that the med beds are supposed to be able to do, not just regenerate, but grow limbs, all this kind of thing, which is known about. It's out there. We don't get it though, do we? We're told about it. Why is this not available? Because it doesn't make money. When you're sick, you're making money for big pharma. When you put money in the bank, you're making money. You're giving the bank lots of money, aren't you? Everything that we have on this planet is about making money for somebody else, not for yourself. So we're driven by this whole big buck, when in fact a lot of this wouldn't be even necessary if we had the technologies that they're talked about all the time, about the different, the anti-grav, for example. Just think about what that would do to travel,
right,
in terms of flying on cars or whatever. This business of the archaic aircraft that we have, where we take 13 hours to get from one place to another, that it's come out that this kind of the craft they have would, you'd spend maybe 20 minutes or half an hour going from one part of the planet to another, this kind of stuff, where
right,
everything, that's just, use your imagination. There are so many ways. Why has this not come out? Because if the public knew that this had been kept from them, especially in terms of fossil fuels, for example, which we don't need, and all this business about net zero and what have you, all of that is laughable, because ultimately we have the technology that is clean energy, that we wouldn't actually need to pollute the planet in any way. We'd actually clean up the pollution with the technology that they have. But they're using all of that to strip us of anything other than the fact that we're kept as, useful workers until the robots, of course, come, and then we're all going to be on a loser, aren't we? That's another part. That's another part of it. But the bottom line is, it's all about money. It's all about power, and we don't have it. There's only a certain exclusive number that do.
Yeah, you explain that beautifully, and yeah, you're totally right. When I look at it, it's definitely a situation where I would hope that the governments would understand, or the powers that be understand, that there is a scenario where they can exist on the other side of this, and it's just like it would cause them to make the right choices, it takes steps like disclosing or just being fully transparent with the public in order to regain that trust to be able to still continue. But I would think that they would want to exist in this new world, but it just seems like there isn't a way for that to happen, because every time you turn around, they're finding another way to kind of make you look the other way. And it doesn't seem like the system that has been designed, there aren't any, workings in the mix to go ahead and get that to change up any. So it's like either deal with it, or it's going to take an event like extraterrestrial contact. I know there's like probably three things, which would be nuclear war, an asteroid impact, or extraterrestrial contact, which we have in this moment. So that's why I always tell people it's so important that, as just a normal person, you do what you can to try to get this pushed across the line, because that new world and new human aspect is kind of where we want to get to. But even though there's going to be a time that's going to be pretty rough, where it's almost like we've been knocked down a few levels in order to rebuild ourselves back up.
You're absolutely right, Rob. And the bottom line is that we're in that crossroads right now, I believe, where we can take the right turn or the wrong turn. And the truth is, the more that people own their truth, the more they own their experience, the more they own who they are and their reality, the more chance we can tip the scales. It's the fear of being different, the fear of having people judge you because you're different, or the fear that somebody's going to think, there's something wrong with you or whatever. The bottom line is, until we speak our truth, and we've all been born on this planet to do that, by the way, aren't we? We've come here to live fully our truth as a soul. The only way to do that is to stand up and be that truth. And this is what this is forcing us to do right now, is to say, you know what, you can believe me or not believe me, but this is my experience. And, the numbers of people that have had experiences all over the planet that haven't ever said anything about it and been afraid to say because of judgment or whatever, or their culture, or their other people's religious beliefs, or their education, they're too clever to believe in this kind of stuff or whatever. That really has been what's, using fear and judgment to shut people down, when really, as a soul, we've been born to be brave and strong and speak our truth. And the more that do that, the more we realize that this is real. This is part of our heritage. We are connected to many of these intelligences that we talk about. And this is a time now to honor that truth. And it doesn't matter what we're never going to get the truth out of the governments. They're going to spin it however they want to spin it, and whatever works for them. And if it's using fear, they'll use fear. We know that we've been born with certain awareness as part of this collective to change what's going on here. What do? Do you wait till you're on your deathbed before you say, well, actually, I've known about this all my life? Or do you say, you know what?
Right.
Now's the time.
Exactly. And then there's obviously one of the other, sides of this that will have to be dealt with as we go through that process will be the whole mental impact on, like, how do you help people through this that may not be able to mentally accept what it is that's going on? Like, what suggestions would you have for that? Have you thought about that?
Well, let's face it, to a certain extent, we've all been through that, haven't we, already?
Yeah.
Most of us have been programmed into a certain belief system, whether it's religious, spiritual, whether it's educational, scientific, or whatever. And the first thing you do when people have the experience, for example, is they question everything, because if this is real, what does it mean about the rest of my life? And we've all had to do that. I will say that this isn't about belief either. People that have had experiences, some of them have never, ever even looked at ETs or Star Trek or whatever and said, I didn't believe in any of that anyway, but I've had the experience, and you can't deny the experience and what have you. So that's the first thing. It's not about belief. It's about experience for a lot of people. But the rest of us, as we start to question, we see more and more information that's being kept from us that we've not been told about. You have to let go of all the old stuff that doesn't work anymore and say, well, what is the truth? And when you get on that trajectory, you can't go back. You can't say, oh, well, I'd rather not know now. Because once you've gone there, you've gone there and what have you. But would you rather live in denial, in that kind of space where you're being held in fear because you're afraid of looking at anything? Or are you going to say, I want to know the truth. I want to know what I'm here on this planet for. And those that come to me, that's what they're saying is, I want to know. I want to know who I am, why I'm here, what's it all about, what is going on, and what have you. Because that's actually the heritage that we all are aspiring to, is the truth, whatever that truth is. Wouldn't you rather know than not know?
Yes.
Well, there's always going to be the 10% of the planet that a UFO lands on their front lawn and they call it a fire engine because they don't want to go there. Well,
Right.
we're going to get some of that. But for goodness sake, do you want the truth or don't you? That's the choice, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what I mean. I mean, there's gonna, you'll have the deniers. You'll have the ones that want to purposely look the other way because they don't want to come to terms with the moment that we're in. And it's just, there's going to be that whole mental side of it that we have to be able to get through, mental healing. Because like I said, most of us have been affected mentally in some way, period, just dealing with society as it is in the world we live in. But to also go through something like a disclosure moment where you have to kind of rebuild and have to be strong enough mentally to like get through a process like that. And there's just going to be, a group of people who will have to be helped along the way. And it'll be, I've talked to other people about this too, maybe setting up some sort of almost like a AA group, a group where people can come to and kind of talk through it to kind of mentally get, to where we need to go. Because I think there will definitely be a group of people who will need that for sure.
I think you're absolutely right, Rob. And the whole idea of me writing Awakening was a resource book. It's saying, how do you know it's real? What do you do about the fear? What if the kids are having experiences? What if I've got this going on or whatever? So in other words, all the questions I kept getting asked, I put together for Awakening to help people who couldn't find someone to help them, because not everyone can trust or feel they can trust a psychologist, and certainly a problem with certain psychiatry as well because of the way it's judged. So who do you go to? Who's going to support you? You can go to UFO groups, but not all of them are as receptive to people having experiences as others. So it's about finding your tribe or finding those that have the same kind of thing going on and putting out the information. And this is what you're doing. I mean, one of the ways that helps people validate their experiences is listening to this kind of information. Oh, somebody else has this. Oh, thank goodness it's not just me. And one of the things I get many times when people contact me is when they're talking about their experiences and I send them a questionnaire, they're saying, oh my goodness, does this mean other people experience the same things as me? Mm. And I always remember this phone call from a 60-year-old Australian man who said, oh, I've had all these weird experiences all my life, he said, and what have you, it's really hard for me to talk about it. So I sent him the questionnaire, and within 24 hours, he was on the phone again, and he was in tears, and he said, how do you know about my life? Because of course the questionnaire was all the patterns, and he could see all this, and it was echoing with him. So what we can do is we can help people validate their experiences so they don't feel weird and wonderful, and understand that it's okay. And there are not just millions. I believe there are billions out there that are having experiences, even if they don't fully understand what it is they're experiencing, because they may interpret it through a religious window or a cultural window or whatever. They haven't fully understood that it's actually us connecting with our heritage, which is our star heritage. And this is part of this waking up to a new reality that we're all experiencing.
Wow. And so with that being said, I mean, you're the founder for the Australian Close Encounter Resource Network. You investigated and researched over 3,500 cases. What are some of the ones that you look at that really drive it home for you as far as the validity in a lot of the things that people may claim?
Well, there's many. And this is one of the things as a researcher, you're looking for, more patterns of experience. And the more that I isolate different patterns that people tell me about what's going on for them, what I'm certainly seeing is many families that are having experiences. It isn't just one person in the family. And in fact, one that comes to mind that's particularly interesting is a lady who's had 7 children. And all of them have had interactions with these beings. All of them are drawing the beings that they're seeing. And the eldest one, I think she's shown her mum drawings of I think it's like 260 images of different intelligences that she's connecting to. But the whole family are awake. They're all having experiences with these intelligences, seeing craft and all the rest of it. The family affair is why I wrote The New Human, because it was the children too talking about their special friend or their we said the invisible friend. Well, in fact, to them, it's not invisible. It's like spirits are not invisible to them either. They're seeing them, there's no question, and communicating with them. And that's very real to them as well. So for me, it's looking at the patterns of experience, because then I can, when somebody fills out a questionnaire for me, I can look at it and think, yeah, here's another one, because I can actually see the patterns there.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that is very clear is often these experiences are lifelong. They're not just the one-off in many cases, where they say, oh, well, I saw a craft when I was 18 with my mum, and we didn't know what to make of it, but it was very close and what have you. When you do a regression hypnosis with them, you often find they've had interactions right from 2 or 3 years old, going all the way up. And part of that is because they're often educated on the craft. And that's what is why so many of them become more aware, because they're literally shown how to use their abilities. I always remember this 8-year-old explaining to me, she was from New York actually, with her mum, and she said to me, she was excited because 2 days prior to talking to me, she said she'd gone up on the spacecraft and they'd taken her to a planet where she was shown how to levitate and use her third eye in terms of awareness. And then they were showing her how they manipulate DNA of different species and seed other planets. And she was really excited about telling me about this, that it's planets not just in this universe, but other universes as well.
Wow.
Now, this isn't, this is the 8-year-old just really excited. I need to tell Mary this or whatever. Her mum was having experiences. And when people say, oh, well, the kids pick it up from the parents, no, they don't. And that's something I'm very clear about when people ask me, is it the parents influencing? Many parents don't mention anything. I say, I've never mentioned anything. It's them telling me what they've experienced or whatever, and showing me more of their own experience and how they've, they'll draw the different colored beings, like this little girl who's 7 that I did an interview with only a few weeks ago. And she's explaining that she's a hybrid. Now, this is her term. She found out when she was 4 years old that she was a hybrid, told her mum, and said that she's part blue avian, part human, and that she's bringing in the frequencies, especially to heal and to assist others to heal by activating them. This is a 7-year-old explaining this, saying at 4 she knew she was a hybrid. Now, this isn't what you see on cartoons on telly.
Right, exactly. Where would she pick that up? Yeah, that's crazy. So what else have you seen? I mean, what else, like, as far as if you were to build a model based off of the research that you've done, like, what would you say from those you've spoken to is the purpose for the ETs being here, and then the outlook that they have for us, like, in total? What would be the model of that based on the conversations that you've had?
Well, I think what's clear for those that are communicating, and remember that communication is often in the form of downloads of information that they haven't consciously learned, and suddenly they're obsessed with astrophysics or certain types of healing techniques or whatever. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is the communication is telling them more about themselves, why they've come, what their mission is and purpose, things to look at that are not working on this planet. In other words, the model is to change the energy of the planet, or as one 10-year-old explained, that he'd come to the planet as a center seed to change the pollution on the planet, because that was part of his role. He's coming to help with the ecology and whatever. So what we're hearing from most of those that are having experiences that are communicating is we have to look at our planet in a far more holistic way in terms of taking care of it. That's the big message. You're destroying the planet. You're destroying the ecology. You're destroying the life of this planet, and you've got to stop. You've got to start taking care of it because it's precious. And so the message is often very clear, and that they've come in as to be aware that we've come as caretakers to this planet, and it has the opportunity, and we have the opportunity to make it blissful down here, absolutely blissful planet. And this is the overriding message, is to stop what you're doing. I mean, we're terrorizing this planet in terms of what we're doing to it, with all the mining, all the things that we're doing, which are not in the least respectful of this wonderful planet that we live on, or whatever. That's often the message many of them get when they go up on the crop. You've got to stop this. This is your role or your mission to be part of that. And everyone seems to have a part to play in that. We all have our own particular skills. Some have come in to help the other star seeds. Some of them have come in to start new healing technologies. Some of them have come in with free energy devices. I meet people who have the scientific knowledge for all sorts of new technologies, which they're trying to promote because they're given this information from these intelligences. So we've got quite a number of these star nations that are trying to filter through information through humans, star seeds, to actually help change this planet. And that's what I'm seeing that's the mission. The mission is to create a new way of living on this planet, and some call it the new earth, but really what it is a new paradigm for the new earth, an acceptance too that we are being assisted to reach another level of consciousness, so we can communicate normally and easily with them in a telepathic way, because there are others that are already doing that. There are many people that contact me and are having communications with various star nations, whether it's the Pleiadians, whether it's Andromeda, Arcturus, or whatever. And I'll say to them, how is it that you're connecting to that particular star system? They'll say, oh, because they're family. They're my family. So they've incarnated from that particular star nation into human form to be the ones on the ground, if you like, wearing the human suit. But really, they don't feel they belong here. They feel they belong in another place, and say, this isn't my home. I don't feel this is home. I'm here at the moment because I've got a job to do.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so that basically them working through us on a hands-off approach, sort of. And so, I mean, that because a lot of people say that they walk amongst us, and then I'm thinking, if they walk amongst us, why would they also want to use us as a conduit if they're here, I guess in human form themselves? So that, but then also, was one thing I was definitely going to ask you here. Gosh, I hate when that happens. Okay, scratch that. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into let's see, the book that you wrote, The New Human Awakening to the first book, The Awakening, how extraterrestrial contact can transform your life. So with that phrase, what do you mean by that? So how extraterrestrial contact can transform your life?
Well, that was when I first created the Ascension. I was there really to listen, to honor the experience, and research as much as I can about what this was all about. Was it, a really negative agenda? Were they benevolent? What's actually going on? And what I discovered was, primarily in a majority of cases with ET contact, ultimately people transcend their fear and get to a point of acceptance and acknowledgement and connection to many of these intelligences that they are interacting with. And I didn't really know for sure, but that's what I was seeing. And one of the things that confirmed that was when we did the survey with the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation, with the 4,200 people, 600 questions, was we found 85% had a psycho-spiritual transformation. So it actually confirmed what I was already seeing more and more, was people completely change in their ideology, in terms of what mattered to them, in terms of how they viewed their family, their life, their soul journey. All of those things were expanded and in a holistic way. So I thought, well, if these guys have got a negative agenda, it's very hard to believe that when they're making such positive changes with the people that they're interacting with. But what many say is, what about the 15%? It's not that way. And that's different, because what we're seeing is that there may be some that do have their own agenda, or they're more self-serving for sure. But I also attribute that negative side to what we call my lab. And I don't know how many of your audience are familiar with my lab, but if they are, they will know that that's human orchestrated abductions that are traumatic, where they're terrorized, where they're abused and drugged and made to feel that it's ET, when in fact it's actually human orchestrated. So you've got that in the mix, and you've got maybe some, I can't say for sure everyone is benevolent, because I don't know. I don't think we have enough data to say that, but I know the majority for sure seem to find that it's been a transformative experience once they've transcended the fear, understood more of their part in it and their connection to these beings, which some will say, well, they're family, because they find out they've got genetics from that particular star system or that particular being. And so it completely changes their whole view of what it is to be human, and that they're in fact aligned with certain star nations.
And so do you think, and that's what I was going to ask you, I remembered, it was the whole, so, you know, most messages that people say they get from ETs are benevolent messages of love and light, like you were explaining earlier. Is there, what do you think the reason is that they don't get the other side of that? Like, there really aren't a lot of experiences where people say they've come across ones that weren't so great. You hear it occasionally, but why do you think it's not more of a broader thing talked about?
Well, I think, well, it is certainly, there are those, certainly some within ufology that think it's all negative, that there's no benevolence, that it's all mind control or whatever. And again, everybody, you know, they for whatever reason, that's what they've come to believe or understand. And I was very careful to be very objective when I work with people with hypnosis and what have you, because it's very important that you don't influence their understanding or their interpretation of their experiences. And so for me, when you take them into that space, you find out what's actually going on. And often they can have a dialogue with the beings when they're actually in that hypnosis space, and say to them, what are you doing? And the being may say, well, we're doing a healing procedure, or, you know, you've got an issue with something to do with your heart or whatever, and we're doing this, this, and this. Because what is really fascinating is 50% of those that have had these experiences have had a healing procedure on board craft. And Preston Dennett's a wonderful researcher that's talked about this many, many times. Now, 50% is a lot of those that are having healing on board craft. What is that telling you? What does that say? Yeah. So to me, the outcome is what we're looking at. How has that affected you? Has it affected you ultimately in a benevolent, positive way or not? So again, the thing is, people don't always know that there's something called program life forms. And these are life forms created by the government that are like greys, like reptilians, and what have you. And they are used to promote fear, rather than these can be, in fact, benevolent. So it's so complex to try and make a judgment about that. To me, Rob, I can't, because I don't know enough to do that. I only know that the majority of cases is transformative and positive and benevolent. That doesn't mean to say that every species is, and it certainly doesn't say a lot of positive stuff about our particular human government either, because I think they've been lying to us right from the word go, and still are.
Yeah, and it'd be great to learn more about what the program life forms that you talk about.
Okay. There's Miles Johnson's a researcher I know quite well in England, and he's done a lot of interviews called under the term bases. And he was the first one with the ones he was interviewing that were actually saying they go down to some of the bases in England underground, and he has seen some of the whistleblowers have actually seen these look like greys. And some look like reptilians, but he said they're not what you think they are. They're actually programmed. They're like clones of those species, which they are using as a way to get people to believe that they're evil. Because he said he went past one, he knew it wasn't the real reptilian, but it was actually a clone of the reptilian. So they're cloning some of these intelligences, which we know cloning now is a lot more real than people want to believe, perhaps. But
Right.
so you've got programmed, and they're programmed life forms for the government. So they do what they're told or whatever. And I also know from a lady who's is a hybrid, part reptilian, part human, knows that some of her eggs have been used to create other hybrid reptilian humans with the military. And she said when she met them, they were really dark. These children of hers were really dark because she said they'd been programmed by the military. And one lady I did a regression with was quite fascinating because she said, I'm on a table and they've got this right above me is this image of a mantis, and they're telling me that it's evil and it's wicked and it's going to hurt me and what have you. In other words, being programmed to believe the mantis were all evil. So those are just some of the stories that come up. How much you take on board of that, I don't know, but you have to at least honor the fact that this is how the person interprets why we're being programmed to believe certain intelligences aren't positive or not benevolent. That's not, again, to say that there are those that that are self-serving and have their own agendas. I couldn't say one way or another because I don't know, but all is in the matrix, isn't it? So, but predominantly we're seeing if 85% have a positive experience ultimately, then most of them must be benevolent and want to wish us well in terms of our evolution. That's how I've come to that conclusion.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That does make sense, because I was thinking about it and I'm like, okay, maybe if there were malevolent encounters, maybe those people didn't survive. Maybe those people don't recall the episode, or maybe the malevolent species really have no interest in interfacing directly with humanity. And maybe that could be a reason why the count may be not there for that. But you'd have to think there's, both sides to it, that has to be some element there that isn't positive.
Oh, I think we'd be naive to think it's all positive. I think I look at things from the perspective of the soul journey. And I mean, we've come to incarnate onto this planet to experience both the positive and the negative. That's part of what we're experiencing on this planet right now, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And which way does the soul choose to go? And the reason I use the soul as part of the journey, because most of those that are very aware, that have these experiences and are aware of who they're communicating with, many of them are aware of they've come from somewhere else. When you talk to a 10-year-old who tells you he's come through a portal in the sun from another dimension, when you talk to children saying, that they'll recognize a planetary system that they come from, or an adult will say, I'm connected to the Pleiades or Andromeda or Arcturus or all of those things. So the soul journey is part of this. It's not just the human journey. It's the fact the soul has chosen to incarnate, because that takes it to a whole new level. And it helps us understand that we're here to experience both positive and negative. And with that, making the choices of how we want to perceive it or understand it or interpret it. That's part of this, human adventure. So if we didn't have black and white and all the shades in between, how would we learn? If everything was perfect, it would be a bit boring, I think. We've come here not to be bored, and to challenge ourselves.
Right. And there's another thing, we can get into this in hour two, but I've always wondered why when I speak to people who are channelers or someone who's delivering a message, and they take the message so matter-of-factly, and I'm always like, is there ever an element of potential deception there? Like, is there ever a time where these ETs are maybe telling you what they want to hear in order to gain something for themselves at the end of this? And that's something we can jump into in hour two. Right now, we'll take a pause for the cause. As we get ready to jump into our first break of the night, we will be back with our guest, Mary Rodwell. You guys don't go anywhere.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio After Hour number 2 with me, your host, Mr. Rob G, as we get back into it with our guest tonight, Mary Rodwell. But first, I want to talk to all the space travelers out there. You guys are already space travelers. Consider taking the next step and join the Space Travelers Club for as little as $5 per month by joining our Patreon. Totally appreciate it if you do that. Also, as Paranormal Pixie Laura has stated here, as we're showing on the screen, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video. We do appreciate it. Also, any questions that you may have for our guest, Mary Rodwell, tonight, please put them in caps so I can save those, and we will pose those questions at the end of the hour. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Mary. And we were, before the break, we had talked about... I'd ask a question really about the potential of, channelers or some people that may receive messages from ET. At any point, could they be considered deceptive? Like, has anyone thought about that? And what do you think about that?
I think absolutely, because a lot depends on everything we have in this reality. Let's face it. Who works out that MSN is deceptive? Initially, you believe everything on the news, don't you? You think it's telling you the truth until you find out that it's not telling you the truth. And you start working out that perhaps that's not accurate. Well, there's no different in the non-physical world. Information you're getting, you've got to have a certain resonance to that. It's got to feel right, because otherwise it may not be right for you, because there are other intelligences that are going to try and work through your openness as a channel to deceive you. And there's a lot of really interesting ways that you can work that one out. For example, if you've got a really good friend and they're constantly telling you what to do and how you should do it and dominating you, if you've got the same thing through your channeling or the intelligence that's working with you saying you've now got to do this, I'm telling you to do that and the other, you know what? It's probably not a really good intelligence to listen to. We've got to learn discernment on this planet, not just in the physical world, but the non-physical world. And if you're still in a lot of fear, you're more inclined to get intelligences that will work with that fear frequency. So everything will be about, you want to watch out for this because this is going to happen to you, or that's going to happen to you, or whatever. So it's almost like the way that I talk to people that are tapping into that side of themselves is, what is it in you that when someone comes to your front door, part of you says, I can invite this person in for a cup of tea. But another person, you're thinking, no, I think I'm going to leave them the other side of the door. It's the same with this. Start connecting. First of all, you've got to have what I call a high intent. Because if your high intent is, I only want the highest truths and what have you, you're putting out a frequency like a radio. And you're saying, I'm only accepting the highest of the highest, whether it's love, compassion, truth, whatever it is. You're putting out a frequency. The only ones that are going to respond to that will be the ones of that frequency, because you're saying, this is what I want. But if you're in fear and you're doing everything out of fear, you're going to pull in the frequencies of fear, and including intelligences that use your fear and say, you've got to watch for this, you've got to watch for that. So it's really about you learning to be of the highest intent as possible to bring in the highest intent back. Ego is another one. If you're full of ego and what have you, what are you going to get? You're going to get intelligences that play on that ego and telling you how great you are and how wonderful you are and you're this, that, and the other. Well, is it true? Or is it just that they're blowing smoke somewhere? So it's all about discernment. It's not just in the physical discernment when you go in the shop and you say that person feels right and that one doesn't. Yeah. It's exactly the same in the non-physical world. You've got to learn to discern the difference. And by the intent, by how you feel from that information, whether or not that's feeling useful and positive or not the same thing. Does it resonate? Does it make sense to you? Or are you just listening to it because you think they must know more than you, therefore you just have to do as you're told? No, you don't. No, you don't. Any more than you have to in the physical. So it's about, if you're going to work multidimensionally, you've got to learn the difference between the high frequencies and the low frequencies. And if someone's telling you what to do or ordering you about or telling you how absolutely marvelous you are all the time, you're going to say, oh, hold on a minute, is that really feeling right for me? because it's about the resonance to truth. Just like you need the resonance to truth on this planet. Do you listen to MSN and think, you know what, I'm not so sure they're telling me the truth? And then you start looking at alternate information that connects you to that. And that goes for any of the channels that come out. There's some wonderful channels out there. One that I particularly rate as being really of a high frequency is Bashar. Daryl Anker's Bashar, for example. Common sense, makes sense. If that's the way it works for you, then that's not a bad frequency to listen to. So again, it's relying on you to use your senses, to trust yourself and realize the guru in your life is you.
Yeah, I love that answer. And I'm a senses guy too. So yeah, I totally love that because I think our comments, and I've said this a million times, I think we can answer a lot of the questions using common sense, because I think that's really what it's for. So you don't need any, academic, paperwork or knowledge in order to figure some of that stuff out. And most of it is going to be figured out and resolved with our own common sense. So that makes a lot of sense. And the fact that you also talked about keeping the vibration high, the frequency high, then it only makes sense that you could vet out lower frequencies by doing that. So that actually makes a lot of sense. I wanted to get into dreams, and because we kind of touched on this on the last conversation. What do you attribute to dreams? And do you believe that the ability to astral travel to places is a thing, to other destinations?
Absolutely. Astral. One of the interesting things with the research that we did with the Dr. Ed Mitchell Free Foundation was in terms of contact with non-human intelligences. And 75% of them said that their visits to the craft were out of body, not physical. Only 25% were physical. That's why they can't bring a piece of the craft back 9 times out of 10, because their consciousness has actually gone there, not their physical body. And often their consciousness will inhabit another form on board craft as well. As I've talked to and worked with those that have said, when I was on board craft, one lady told me that she was in the grey form, like a grey, as a scientist doing work on the board the craft. And I said, so when do you get back to your human body? Where is it? And she said, oh, it's over to one side. And she described that when she leaves the grey body, her consciousness then was a bright orb of light that moved and inhabited her human body. And then she came back down to earth. So understanding that our consciousness is not tied to our body. And many with, they're aware of astral traveling, having out of body experiences, and even near-death experiences where they're shown the difference between their consciousness and the physical container, which is what allows us to operate on this physical plane. It's that's providing the vehicle to enable us to be material, to be physical, and what have you. When you go out of body, you can go to other dimensions, other timelines, parallel universes, and sometimes they'll see themselves, another part of themselves, making different choices in a parallel universe and saying, in this other universe, I'm married with 4 kids and I'm doing this, this, and this, and it'll be completely different. Or it may be they made different choices to the ones they've made in this life. So the soul, it appears, can be in multiple there can be multiple parts of the soul, if you like, aspects. Almost like if you've got the oversoul like this, aspects of you can be like the fingers. So you've got all these aspects actually experiencing all at the same time. So this is, and you can tap into that. Just like you can tap into past lives, you can tap into what the other aspects of the soul are doing or whatever. So sometimes that's what we're experiencing, is other aspects of ourselves experiencing things in a dream state. Although sometimes, there is just the dream where you're assimilating what's happened on, during your day or whatever. There are other parts of yourself that are actually exploring and doing things. And that's what we hear with some of these other stories of people saying, I know I was on a craft and I was piloting the craft. And there's no reason why they wouldn't be. They might be in another form to do it. When you've got an 8-year-old that tells you that his ancestor's a mantis being, and that when he goes on board craft, sometimes he evaporates, he calls it, into the mantis form for a time. So he's embodying another form for a little while and then comes back to his human form. We have no idea the capabilities of the soul and what the soul can do, or the fact that we can have aspects of ourselves in other realities, whether or not it's parallel or dimensional or whatever. It probably is all of that for all I know, and even more than I even know. So we're just learning about what is reality, aren't we?
Yeah, and I thought about that too. And I've asked the question before on the consciousness being able to be abducted instead of the physical body. And because I think that's the thing that people say. Some people say that both things are happening. And it just, when you talk about different abduction cases, it just sounds like, okay, this makes more sense if it was an abduction of the consciousness rather a physical abduction. So, if in the ability for your consciousness to travel to different places in that fashion, I've had dreams myself where I felt like I've gone to other places and was actually there. So I think that definitely is a real thing. And, I've toyed with the idea that when trying to figure out what shadow people are, if those are potential, like, are you potentially seeing someone that is astral traveling, or just trying to figure out what that is? What has your outlook been on shadow people? What do you think they tie into?
Well, it's hard to know for sure, of course. We can only make an assumption. But people that see shadow people, generally they don't seem to interfere. They seem to observe and what have you. And it may be just another one of these interdimensional entities that is observing and looking at what you're up to or whatever. Or it could be very much that, I don't know for sure, because all I know is people can be frightened of the shadow beings. But as far as I know, they've never proven to be harmful in any way other than just as an observer. So they may be a being from another dimension that you're seeing in that form. But I can't say for sure.
Yeah, it's just things that I kick around because it could be exactly that. Some say it's potentially a paranormal thing where it's a spirit, is a lost or trapped spirit. And just trying to figure out what that is. And also, since I've spoken to you, I actually had an experience with these orbs. I don't know if you've ever seen these floating orbs in a room. They
Yeah.
capture them on ring cameras, but I caught some. Our cameras were triggered like 3 or 4 times, and when we went to look at the video, there are these orbs floating around the room. Have you ever, in your research, heard anything about anyone report about orbs? And then, what would you garner? In your opinion, what do you think that could be related to?
The Orbs phenomena is something I've been fascinated with for many, many years. And I've come to the conclusion that orbs can be several things. There's been evidence that the orbs are what we look like when we're out of body. They talk about the light body, or the Merkaba, in metaphysical terms, is an orb of light. I know that when I had a fascination for every night I'd go outside and I'd take pictures of orbs and whatever. And I remember once saying, can you give me different colors, and asked for a certain color. And then I would take a photograph and it would be the blue color that I'd requested or whatever. And I've even got a photograph where I had a friend staying, and I said, well, they're conscious. You can talk to them, you can have a communication with them. And to prove it, I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to stand on my deck. You take the camera and I'll tell you when I think it's close, when there's an orb there. And I sort of said, come on, guys, show your face, show your orb. And when I felt it was there, I told them to take the photograph, and within a meter of my hand was an orb.
Wow.
So I know they're conscious. And I've done several presentations where I've had people actually having a dialogue with orbs and getting information from orbs, because I do believe they're an intelligence.
Yeah.
And that we are. And what was interesting is I did a regression with a beautiful lady once many years ago, and she described the fact that her partner was really annoyed with her because he couldn't wake her up. And he said, the whole room was filled with these orbs, and he couldn't wake her up. And it was when we did the regression we actually found out that one of the orbs was actually her, and that's why he couldn't actually wake her up, because she was actually one of them. So I think they can be other things as well. They can be other intelligences. They can even be craft. So they can be a combination of things, but the orbs themselves, I believe, are conscious, and they can be souls or our soul or other intelligences as well. So it can be all of that, and you can certainly communicate with them.
Let me show you my orb actually here. Let me show you this, Mary. You can see this.
Ah, yes. I've seen so many like that. It's amazing, isn't it?
It is definitely amazing, and
Yeah.
it has definite, purpose to it. And I've seen videos where a guy, because you can speak through these cameras, and the guy said something to it, and when his voice activated, the orb reacted to it, like it was reacting to sound.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty awesome, pretty crazy.
Oh, I've seen so many fascinating video of orbs of different sorts. And I remember a 9-year-old explaining that her little brother had a blue orb that protected him and followed him around. And she actually had video of this blue orb with the little boy. And she said that orb actually protects him. So they are their support. I believe they are of intelligences. Look at that. I mean, it's stunning, isn't it? And it could very well be granddad that died, or it could be grandma that died, or whatever. Oh, and I'll tell you a little story about that as well. When I was in England, I did a regression with a 15-year-old, and he'd had an experience where he was in the garden, and there was the UFO, and a being came down, and he also saw 2 or 3 orbs with the being. And I said to him, he said, there's orbs there. And he said, oh, one's granddad, one's great granddad, and one's my uncle, or something like that. They were all family members. And I said, so how do you know what the orbs are or who they are? He says, because they've told me, and they've told me they're here, so I won't be frightened. So they'd actually appeared by the being, and he recognized them for what they were. Wow. And what was fascinating was that they were letting him know it was safe, and he's going to be all right. And when the being climbed up and went back on the craft, he said the orbs followed the being onto the craft.
I had a feeling like that. I felt like that, and that was one of the things that I thought about was could this orb or these, because apparently these are everywhere. Yeah. These are all over the world. And so it was just like, okay, well, is this like is this something that they're able to see through, almost like an eye, almost like a portal into where it's at, like into my room? And I just thought about that, and also the fact that when they talk about orbs, some people talk about them manifesting into physical form, and then going back into an orb afterwards. And I'm like, well, okay, is it that? And kind of running down the list. So it's cool to be able to hear your input on that.
They're fascinating and very much very real. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so, and I don't know why Ring is able to capture these things. I don't know what the spectrum. I think they use night vision, or I don't know what they use, but for whatever reason, most of the ones that I see that have been captured on Ring cameras. So, yeah, it's just showing that if you were able to see in another spectrum, all the things you'd be able to see, beginning with orbs, and then maybe even some of these things that sit in the next dimension or right in that next realm, like you'd be able to see those as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so let me get this out of here. And yeah, so with that that kind of takes me into what do you want for humanity at the end of all this? Like, once disclosure hits, we work everything out. What do you hope to see take place within humanity, like as far as our status in preparing ourselves for the next stage?
Well, that's a big one, isn't it? Being a grandmother, I want not just for my children, but for my grandchildren, a better future than the one that's on offer at the moment, which is being taken over by robots and generally everybody ending up as slaves to the system. I would like to see us free as the species, free to bring our creativity, our awareness, and our connection, and working together to make this beautiful planet and enjoy this beautiful planet, living the way that I believe we can and should live, and what have you. And also, by being aware that we're not alone, that we can connect to other intelligences and learn from them and grow from them, and get part of, and become part of the galactic community. I want to go and see these places. I want to go to these planets. I want to experience different environments and what have you. I remember a funny thought in my head, and I was only in my late teens, I think, at the time when we landed on the moon. And the thought that was really weird for me was, I remember thinking, you mean we haven't even got to the moon yet? Like, what? Where that came from, obviously, was a part of me that thought we were a bit more technologically advanced than we were, because I couldn't believe that we hadn't even got to the moon. It seemed really weird to me. You know, what? We still haven't got there? We've got all these planets and these universes and all the intelligences. And when I feel quite jealous, if you like, of those that are aware they're taken to other planets and they're shown different things, and they're shown far more of all the technologies and the spiritual expansion and all that. To me, it's like this wonderland that we can only just glimpse at the moment. I want to see how that plays out when we actually start using all our abilities and our awareness. When you've got children that tell you that they can influence the elements, for example, and communicate with them. I always remember this 9-year-old telling his mum when he was in England, in Glastonbury, and Glastonbury's got a tour, which is a kind of, it's called a tour, TOR, and with a building on the top. It's all supposed to be where King Arthur was and all the rest of it. And he said, and the wind up there was quite powerful. And he says to his mum that he's communicating with the wind, and the wind actually came from Italy. So he actually knew the origin of where the wind came from. And I thought to myself, is there so much that we can experience on this multidimensional level? We haven't even begun to understand how that is, how we can work with it to understand. When you've got a little girl that explains that she's a hybrid and she's 8, and she explains that she's part water being, part human, and explains when she listens to music, she not only hears the music, but she follows the frequency of that music to the person who's created it and the emotions and feelings of that person who created it. That's a whole new level of experiencing reality. How amazing is that going to be? What can we do? What can we experience that we haven't even begun to understand yet? That's what intrigues me, is what can our future be once we have the freedom to explore it?
Yeah, and it's you say having peaks into it, and there are definitely a lot of examples of that happening, where we get peaks of our potential with certain things like deja vu, and they're even in, you know, some people like myself. I'm a musician at heart, so you know there have been times where I have visually, or at least it was felt to me like I was visually seeing music, like from a sound into something that I was seeing, which sounds crazy, but I think it's just being able to, I don't know, like see on a different plane music in a form where it isn't just sound, where it's like 3D. It's like a 3D thing. Yeah. So I think that's one of those things you talk about, maybe being able to tap into. And I think having a glimpse of that was kind of mind blowing for me, because it's even hard to explain.
Well, I think, Rob, what you're mentioning or talking about is synesthesia, where somebody experiences something more than one level.
Yeah.
Like, you know, whether or not it's a color, and it can be a feeling, it can be an emotion, it can be even a mathematical geometric form. It can be all those things rather than just a color.
Okay, I think that's what it is. Yeah, Christine is saying the same thing in there too. Yeah, it's just, it just shows that there are a lot of things that we haven't tapped into, and we only know of the 5 senses that we have when we probably have 20 senses when you really think about it. And it's just being able, and you're right, just the moment that seeing a world where we're fully tapped into that, I think is going to be a pretty amazing thing as well. um yeah, for sure. So with that being said, let's go into, let's go into David Paulides in the missing 411. I don't know if we've talked about this, but this was mind blowing to me when I heard this, that there were six in the United States alone, I think 600,000 people that go missing every single year, and that's such a huge number. Have you thought about that? And what do you think maybe some of the answers to why that is? Obviously serial killers, wild animals, things of that nature. But do you think that they're related also maybe to ET abductions, or what do you kind of think about that?
I think it's more likely, but I don't know for sure, that this is all to do with the sex trafficking and all that stuff to do with that's going on around the globe, and all the dark stuff with the adrenochrome and all this kind of stuff. I think it's more to do with that. That's where I'd put my money, to be honest. Whether or not any of them are taken by ETs, it's not something that I've come across. I mean, I don't discount anything because I can't, but I do know that it's real enough on this planet that children are taken all the time and are used and are kept in underground bases, etc., etc. And what has been disturbing is some of those intuitives that I've worked with have tapped into that and actually have seen that and have actually worked on another level of consciousness to try and help with the terrorizing that goes on with these children, what have you, because they visited with their consciousness and have said, I've seen it, it's terrible. And they've explained there's bases all under a lot of the big cities and what have you. They've seen the underground cells and all the rest of it. And part of their awareness has been that they can actually see that and go and visit it with their consciousness and try and help from another level. So I know for sure it happens on this planet, but I've not come across them mentioning it on spacecraft or anything like that.
And so those situations you're talking about, that'd be human
Yeah.
on human. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying that it could be that as well, because I don't know. I haven't come across it, but I do know that those that have had experiences, some of them have seen it, either physically seen it or through their consciousness, they've remote viewed it, or they've seen it when they're out of body. And that's all across the planet. Every country, lots of the big cities have got these underground bases where they've got these cells where these children are kept. It's absolutely horrendous. And the devastation it causes the intuitive to actually see this kind of stuff. And in hypnosis, they say you really don't want to see it, but have dreams of it as well. They're actually seeing it. And this is a problem for the governments, of course, is because there are so many people now that are seeing the truth of what's going on the darker side of, humanity. And, it's very hard to keep it quiet when people are actually seeing it for themselves through their consciousness, because they can't shut that up.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty heavy. Wow. Okay. I didn't know. Yeah. I mean, that's a thing. It's definitely something I think is very important. It should be for surely looked into, because if that's going on, and yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm glad I heard that. That's actually a different perspective than I've ever had when I asked that question. So that's actually excellent that you put that forward. Now, another thing I did want to get into is just extraterrestrials here on Earth. So do you really feel that they walk amongst us? And then if so, how do you lean into, do they live here full time? Because you have some people that say they think that they're underwater. You have some people that think that they're inside the earth in caves. What is your, what have you thought about when you think about that?
I think all the above. I think we do have higher intelligent different forms of humanity or star beings living perhaps under the surface of this planet. Certainly, I think it's quite possible they're in the oceans, because we see UFOs going into the oceans and what have you. Lots of the Navy have seen the craft go into the oceans. They've probably got underwater bases as well as underground bases, for absolutely sure. We have many types of humanoids wandering that are not from here, or are visitors that wander around and check out humanity and what have you. And I've got no doubts that that's the case. I will say there's a couple of times where I've looked at someone and wondered about them. There's just something strange about their energy. And I've never forgotten a lady. Then I went into the post office once, and I was looking at her, and I mean, she was sitting there just doing what the rest of them do, the postmasters do or whatever. And as I was looking at her, I thought, there's something weird about her. There's something really strange. And I couldn't put my finger on it. And she looked at me, and I thought she picked up that I was looking at her as though there was something weird about her or whatever. And, I never saw her ever again in the post office as part of the employees. Never saw her again, just that one time. But there was just something weird about, and I've met a number of people that say, I think I've met one, and that there's just something about them that's different. There's something about their energy, even though they look like you and I. There's just something about them that you pick up and you think, something really weird,
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Did you hear that?
Sorry, that was my son sending me.
Okay.
My son's just sending me a message. I tried to tell him I was on an interview.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all right. So, so I think they are amongst us. I think they are monitoring us. And I think that it's we're an interesting species to see, and we get visitors, we get tourists. I'm pretty certain we get a number of them coming and seeing what we're up to down on this particular planet or whatever. There's a gentleman called Charles Hall who wrote a number of books where he said that when he was in the area in Nevada, I'm not sure whether it was Area 51 or S4 or whatever, where he was to do with weather monitoring, and he met the tall whites that have a base there. And he said the tall whites occasionally would dress up in normal clothes and go to Las Vegas and manage to get away with. Yeah, I actually met him. I actually ended up having dinner with him and his wife and a few others. And it's very compelling to hear his story. I mean, I think this was in the 60s. He's written about 8 or 9 books about his experience being there and connecting with them. But that's just one story about the tall whites being well known by the governments that are here on the planet with their own bases. So, there's so much we don't know.
Yeah, I've also heard Arcturians as well, right? Aren't those the blue ones, right?
Yeah.
That they've come across those as well. And I've told people all the time, I mean, if you go look at some of these natural cave systems out there and how massive they are, and how many of them there are, there could be something to that. I could see something living in there for sure, and maybe you just don't go deep enough to come across it. But I think there's a group that I watch that does cave diving, and they go to crazy caves, and I'm like, one day you just might bump into something in there. I think it's possible.
I think so too. And the other thing is that it hasn't been brought up, but is very much part of it, is the giants that were on this planet, and there's still apparently some hiding away in some places. And I think there was a group of soldiers that came across a giant in Afghanistan, and there's quite an interesting story about this giant which they managed to capture and what have you. So, some more of our history that has been, if you like, denied, that we did have races of giants on the planet as well, and a lot of the skeletons and what have you have been destroyed deliberately, and that's just another aside of how much we're not told the truth.
Yeah, when you're locked into a society, when you're locked into a bubble, and you're contained in a way that doesn't allow you to see outside of that, then you have no realization of all the possible things that are out there. So even coming down to giants, your society says that it's not possible for that to happen, but that doesn't mean that they're not out there. And that's kind of the thing that I hope everybody gets it to a certain point, that the society that you lived in is like pre-manufactured, and it's made to keep you within certain parameters. It stops you from doing the simple thing like being able to go and live on the land, which is a thing that you can do, but society kind of blocks that, sense out of you, that natural ability to be able to get out there and live on the land. So and it blocks off a lot of other things as well. But that's just, that's why I hate that we so many of us are just so okay to go along with the society that we live in. Some couldn't be bothered. They have their rental, their home, they have their job, they have this, so they're okay. They don't need to see anything further than that. And those are the ones that I kind of want to be able to get to, because you should care. I did this before. I said, if you look at what they offer you for 40 years of working, if they presented that to you at 18 years old with a check, it'd be a check for maybe $2 million, essentially buying you off for the rest of your life, which I thought was pretty wild. And I always ask people, would you accept a number like that? Is that worth your life? And a lot of people are like, no. And it's kind of, when you look at it, that's what society is. They're giving you a set amount of money to kind of buy your attention, essentially, for the time that you're alive. I think that's a shame. And then they spit you out at the end when you retire, right? And they kind of kick you out of the system in order to bring a younger, fresher face in. So it's a mess. It's a mess.
We've got a lot to change, Rob.
Yeah. And that's why we do what we do here. So what do you have going on coming up in the future? Do you have anything set up, any conferences or anything you're speaking at?
I'm not going overseas this year. I've got various things going on with the family and what have you, but I've just finished an Awakening festival and what have you. But my main thing at the moment is really busy with sessions and with people that are waking up. So I'm spending a lot of time really supporting because of what's happening. There's so much happening on so many levels, with particularly parents with the children, and saying, some children get night terrors because of what they're experiencing, because they don't understand it or whatever. Or the parents are trying to work out why their child is struggling at school, or being bullied because of their being different, or not complying with the educational system. So I've been poured in a lot to being counseling support to a lot of the parents or the children with that. So at the moment, I've decided that this year is going to be about support. I do lots of interviews, of course, because to me, that's very important right now. And what you're doing is so important, because you're disseminating the information. And that is what people are seeking more and more, is the information, even more so than, the conferences are great and what have you, but you're reaching so many more people that can't always afford to go to the conferences or don't have the finances to do that, and are still desperately seeking information and whatever. This is what you do, and you make it affordable. People can listen to that information. And that is really the most important of all. And that's why I say kudos to everything you're doing, because it's without you, this information wouldn't be out there, and it wouldn't be supporting the people it supports.
That is awesome. I appreciate that. And I was talking, I forget who I was speaking to about this, but it was puzzling to me why the news networks out there wouldn't look to maybe not necessarily shows, but just people who speak on this issue on the level that we speak on it at, because it seems like they only go for a certain group of individuals to allow to speak to the broader public. And I'm just like, there's so much great evidence and researchers down here on this level where it's like, these are the people you should be talking to. Like, what do you think is the reason the media just can't get it together and kind of refuses to tap into the real experiencer network that we have?
Well, they're being paid to only go to certain levels. We know that mainstream news generally is about following a certain protocol to give a certain narrative, and you only touch on the narrative that's useful. I was actually talking to somebody earlier today, and I was talking about once being on mainstream news over a documentary that was about my work called The Alien Lady. It was a documentary that's been out since 2010. It was done by SBS in Australia. And I said, I remember doing the promo for that in mainstream news. And I remember sitting on this high stool. You know how they stick you on those high chairs and, you're hoping that you don't fall off. And I said, and the level of the presenter was exactly this, because I still can't get over it. And I was sitting there and I was in the suit, doing what I do. And she said to me, Mary, she said, you're sitting there and you look just like my GP. I'm almost inclined to believe you. Simply because I was in a suit and I looked normal, quote normal. Now, that was the response. And here's me talking about stuff that is life-changing for some people and what have you. All she could notice was I looked conventional enough to, have been normal or whatever. Well, that tells you a lot, doesn't it, about mainstream news, when that's what they're looking at or whatever. The fact that I could qualify the information that I was talking about and expand on that or whatever wasn't really what she was looking at all. It was just, what's the profile? Does she look like I expect her to look like, or is she going to be one of these weird ones with crystals hanging from her ear rolls and all the, you know what I mean? And I know exactly what they're looking for. You can play the game. I remember in one of these media ones where they were promoting the whole thing. And I remember this interviewer who thought he was really clever going, so what do some of these ETs look like then? And I says, John, they look exactly like you. And he actually didn't know what to do with it. It's just like, what do you mean? But you can play the game. But what I'm saying is that it is a game. It's not about truth. It's about what they're being paid to convey to the public. And you know that, but you can actually bypass it once you're not intimidated by it. And I'm not intimidated by any of that these days. I'm far too old to care a stuff what they think. But I find that if you're speaking your truth, as you are, Rob, as well, that's the resonance that people get, even if you've got the forum that's biased. You can still get through enough to help people that really are seeking the truth and whatever. So mainstream news can be used just as much as they use you, but don't expect the whole truth and nothing but the truth from mainstream news. You'll get what they want to put out.
Yeah, and they kind of show it because there's been so many different things that they should have covered that they didn't. So it kind of shows what their intent is, what their agenda is. Looking past that though, I think the next group of individuals that should be tapped into to help deliver this message would be like social influencers, social media influencers who have millions and millions of followers, and all they need to do is in a combined effort, coordinated effort, have all these influencers kind of embrace this topic and speak on it as well. There have been a few examples of that, like Joe Rogan. Those are some of his most popular episodes when he talks about that, and some of the few other ones as well. Like if we could get a coordinated effort behind influencers who aren't under the media influence or the government influence that they may have on the media, which we heard the CIA used to feed stories through the media all the time. Like these influencers are separate from that, and maybe that's a group we can tap into that can help deliver the message to the masses.
I think you're absolutely right, Rob, and I think we'll be helped with that because some of them, without doubt, will have been having experiences, and maybe they're okay actually now to start speaking their truth because they feel strong enough in their profile to do that. And I think that's how it'll come, and I think they'll be helped to do it as well, because I think we're all being helped on some other level to get this out there. And I think these beings, these intelligences want this to happen. and they'll help us with that. And I think we're really on the cusp of it now, and I'm very, very hopeful that it's all going to happen very quickly and very soon.
Yeah. You know, even though, and like I said, going back to the catastrophic disclosure, I mean, even though that's a thing that I think has to happen, and it's just, you know, the part that we talked about earlier that I said that scared me being the fact that we do have to go through a rebuilding process. So
Yes.
what does that really mean? And, you know, it surely will expose vulnerabilities within us as we go through that process. And, you know, it's just like, you know, I don't know what to think about that. I don't have any answers or really any suggestions at this point, because it's something that I'm really just grasping right now, you know, what that might be like going through that. What would be some recommendations, like, just if you could think it through, some ways that we could deal with that rebuilding process in a way that we successfully come out on the other side of that?
Well, I think these intelligences know what we're facing. I think they already know. And I think one of the things that's been downloaded to many people that have been in various jobs on this planet, you know, in planning or leadership or in ecology or whatever, I think they're being primed, probably through downloads, so that when it happens, they'll actually know what to do, almost like software. You know, when they get this information, or they get these strange symbols or whatever, that could very well be the software that is activated to say, this is your role now. You know what leadership is. This is how you're going to do it now with this change of paradigm or whatever. I don't think we're going to be left to flounder. I think they know that we're all going to have a new role. And when people say, I've got a mission, I don't know what it is yet, it's because the mission yet hasn't unfolded, but will do when all this happens. And they'll know what to do. They'll be put in places where they're needed and where their skills are needed. And I meet many people in the medical profession, in all various different parts of life, you know, with different skills, that are saying, I've got something to do, but I don't know what it is yet. And I think they will. I think this is what will happen, that it's being set up and the protocols are waiting within them to be activated when the time comes. So we're not going to be left to flounder. I'm absolutely certain of that, because too many of these people have had amazing careers, but now say, I'm waiting to know what it is I'm meant to do. They know they've got something ahead of them, but they just don't know what it is yet. Wow. So I think it's taken care of.
Very powerful and very great answer, Mary. I love that. I really do, because that fills that gap for me. It really does, to know that, yeah, I mean, because I felt that same feeling of having a purpose or a duty that was unclear to me at the time. And then here it is that I'm hosting this show, delivering this message this way. And this was the thing that was waiting for me that I couldn't perceive at the time. So I know that feeling. So I know others having that same feeling that you're speaking about. That's powerful, because that would make sense on how that gap gets filled. And if that is the which sounds very logical, then that should be a great thing and a great crutch to help us into that next era. So that is awesome. What do you have coming up, or where can people find you at? We got about 7 minutes here. I want to make sure that anything you have going on that you are able to say to the audience.
Well, I just say that if you feel this is relevant to you, I've got a questionnaire on my website. You can check out whether or not this is relevant, and if there's anything in it that inspires you to explore it even more, then the option is there for you. You can get me on Google and pull me up. I've done documentaries, as well as I've also done many, many, many interviews, if that's what you're interested in. But if this is meaningful for you, it's about you following your bliss, following that truth, and helping yourself to wake up. And that some of the presentations that I've done, which are on the net, are activating presentations where I'm playing light language and showing symbols and showing scripts. All of those, if you are part of this new wave, which you will be if you're looking at this interview, you can actually help yourself become activated even more by looking at some of this and allowing yourself to sense what it's telling you. The bottom line is all of us have what we need inside us, and it's just a matter of the willingness to actually tap into it. And you can tap into it through meditation, relaxation, being in a quiet place. You don't even have to meditate, just be in a place where you're receptive to listening to yourself, listening to your truth, because ultimately we've all got it inside us. It's just a matter of trusting it. We're very good at trusting everybody else who's got the pieces of paper or they have some credentials or whatever, and we think they must know more than us. Well, actually, the expert on you is you, nobody else. And you've got it there because your soul made sure it was there. I mean, people say, well, how would I know? I said, well, your soul doesn't let you miss the bus. And ultimately, it's made sure you have what you need for what you need on this planet. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. It's not logical, is it? As Spock would say, that ain't logical. So logic says you've got everything that you need. And all it is about now trusting that. Because the only truth really is about you discerning the truth rather than trusting necessarily other versions of the truth that may not actually resonate with you. It's about you now buckling up and trusting yourself, rather than always relying on someone else to make up your mind for you. How about you ask yourself for the truth and listen to that? That would be my message for every single one that's listening.
Yeah, that's strong. That's a powerful message, and that is definitely appreciated. I did want to ask you about real quick, as you were saying that you mentioned something about light language. What is that exactly?
Well, it used to be speaking in tongues in more religious terms. What it means is many people that are doing healing now and writing the scripts are coming out with these languages that are related to their star origins in many cases. Some of them can be translated, but some of them are, if you like, packets of information in a code, like a code, if you like. And some of them actually are activating DNA. So they have different roles to play. Some of it clearing away old programs as well. Some of the language will be a frequency that deals with that. Any of the old technologies that are getting in the way, old languages that are getting in the way of you accessing the truth. So they've got various roles. And even the scripts themselves, one symbol can contain enough information to fill a room with encyclopedias. And it may just be one symbol, but multidimensionally, it contains that information as software. And I believe those are the software that are going to help us work with our new activated human, awake human that's got the DNA activated. We're going to need new software to operate multidimensionally by then, because it will be too much otherwise. We've got to have an operating system that we can work with once we get activated, because we'll need to know how to manage it. And we can't for in our third dimensional self, but our multidimensional self may need that to say, right, I'm now perceiving all of this. How do I manage that? And I think some of it will be the software to enable us to do that. So it's got multiple purposes, a whole range of purposes.
Well, that is totally awesome. And that is probably something we could talk about next time, light language and getting into that whole thing. I do want to go ahead and say, Kira, I appreciate your support. She's saying spoken truths. Mary is the kindest and most genuine heart. Thank you. So this is the love that they have for you out there, and the love I have as well. I do appreciate you, always being available and, coming on to have these conversations. And I would love to continue doing these going into the future.
Absolute pleasure, Rob. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thank you. And we will be in contact soon. You have a great rest of your day out there, and you take care, Mary.
Okay, take care.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye for now.
Yeah. All right, guys. Wonderful conversation with Mary Rodwell, man. Just awesome person. We've had a previous interview as well that we've done here earlier this year. You can find that in the YouTube archive. Definitely want to go back and watch that one as well. We're going to go ahead and get ready to take a pause for the cause as we jump into our last break of the
Conversations
night.
That move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G. on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio after hour number 3. As your host, myself, Mr. Rob G, is back here in the building with you guys tonight. Let's see. What we'll do is, let me see here. We're going to go ahead and jump into some of our Phantom and Monsters here .com. Let's see. We go ahead and get the creepy theme music to go here. All right, so Lon Strickler, phantomandmonsters.com. Awesome website, also awesome YouTube channel. Definitely want to make sure you guys go ahead and go check out Lon, as he has fantastic, terrific, awesome stories that have been submitted to him from people all over the world. And yeah, it gets kind of creepy, man. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at some of those here tonight. And just to remember here, yes, Aloha Dave for sure. Mary will definitely be back on soon. She is a great individual, and I always appreciate her coming in. So she'll be back for sure. Okay, getting into some of these stories here, because obviously this is the last show that we're doing before the break, right? So we're going to do something with you guys, right? We're going to do a little fan interaction for this last hour and make sure that we do something memorable together before we take this break, because it'll be about 3-4 weeks before we see each other again. So getting into some of these stories, let me bring this up on the screen here, familymonsters.com. Let's see. Okay, I think this is the first one here. Yes, this is it. Okay. So this is one of the first stories here. I'll go ahead and read some of these off here. We have Egyptian Air Force fighter pilot recalls blinding light incident over the Red Sea. So an Egyptian Air Force fighter pilot recalls a strange event while flying patrol one night. A bright, unidentifiable light was seen by him and other pilots. It shook them all. The following account was forwarded to me, says Lon Strickler. It says, I am a former Egyptian Air Force Mirage 2000 pilot. I was one of the, quote, unlucky few who got selected to serve their mandatory years as pilot. It was considered unlucky because you stayed in the Army a lot longer than soldiers and officers because of the amount of training that comes with flying a fighter jet. Anyway, fast forward 2 years, I'm a fully trained Mirage pilot, though I don't know much about dogfighting and fighter jet weapons, as I didn't take it on full time, like I said I was in a mandatory service that everyone had to do. It's just I was selected to be a pilot for some reason. I only flew like 6 times in the 3.5 years I served. It's a pitch black night, and I go out for patrol on the Red Sea border between Egypt and Saudi Arabia. My friend is commanded to patrol the border between Sinai and Israel. That's usually the most actively patrolled border. Here, I was flying in Egyptian airspace when an extremely bright light source shone through the cockpit, almost blinding me for a moment. It was so bright, it got right through the tinting on the windows and my helmet. It was almost like that memory wiper in the Men in Black movies. It lasted at least a minute. So just as I was about to call this in to get a possible explanation, the air tower guy starts shouting frantically, but not loudly, like he's talking really fast in a very worried tone. And I couldn't hear him through the radio that well, so I couldn't tell what he was saying. I tuned into the frequency the other pilots were on, and they were all just as shaken as me. 30 minutes later, a calmer voice instructs us all to land immediately, as there is an emergency being investigated by more experienced pilots or dogfighters. So we land 2 at a time. I steer my plane into the hangar and I get out. Everyone has this frightened look on their face, eyes wide open, mouth shut, and sort of lost. Like you talk to them and they're like, sorry, what were you saying again? So I go straight to the base commander, hoping for an explanation that puts my mind at ease. When I got there, I found that he was in his office on the phone, shouting about unidentifiable aircraft infiltrating Egyptian airspace. And that's when I really got scared. I finished my mandatory service years ago now, and I'm currently studying law in the U.S. But that night, I constantly think about, wow. And we hear this all the time. We're hearing this more and more, right? These pilots, fighter pilots that come out, excuse me, and admit that they have come across unidentified things in the sky. Sounds kind of reminiscent of Dave Fravors' account, except for this person didn't encounter it, but at the same time, you can kind of see the similarities there. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and jump into our next story tonight, which this one covers bizarre crawler-like humanoid and creepy woman encountered by a witness. Let me go ahead and get into this one. All right. John, no last name given, was a guest on the recent episode of Nick Hunter's UFO Chronicles podcast. The story he told was so fascinating that I decided to summarize it. East Los Angeles, California, 2005. John had just turned 18 and had a young baby on the way. At the time, he was employed at the 99-cent store, working 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. He didn't have a car, so he would make the 12-minute walk home every night, always carrying a pocket knife for protection. He grew up in the area and was quite familiar with the residents, so he didn't worry that much. One night, possibly September or October, he is vague on the date. I just lost my place here. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay. One night, possibly September or October, he is vague on the date, only that it was a few months before his baby was born, August 12th of 2005. He was walking home at around 2:20 a.m. There was an apartment complex, and behind that, there was a hill. Atop this hill, silhouetted against the light from a nearby house, he could make out a person, quote, crouching like a frog on a lily pad. He assumed it was a neighbor, but as he got closer, he began to realize it wasn't a person at all. Something wasn't right, he recalled. The figure, although kneeling by its legs, appeared to be quite tall, abnormally so. If it were to stand, it had no hair on its head or body that he could see, and no clothes. Because of the lighting, he could not make out a face, only that the head appeared almond-shaped, thick on the bottom, thin on the upper half. Sensing something was wrong, John flipped open his knife. As he did this, it made a snapping noise that seemingly alerted the creature to his presence. It immediately growled at him. The growl sounded neither human nor animal. It was deeply unsettling. John decided to walk very fast to the gate, which allowed him access to the complex. When he looked back at the hill, the creature was gone. As he was walking down the sidewalk almost to his house, he looked back and saw something strange. About 5 houses down, a woman was moving in his direction. Something about this woman seemed off. She had her head down, and her long black hair was hanging in front of her face, and she was dragging her back foot. He knew the area, and he had never seen this woman before. Add to that, something about her really creeped him out. The closest he could compare her to was the girl from the horror movie The Ring. He knew instantly that something very strange was going on. As he made his way through his gate and up his driveway, he stopped. He wanted to figure out what was going on. He slowly walked back to the gate to see if the woman was still standing there, and to his shock, she was gone. He looked left and right, and there was no trace of it. She had vanished somehow. That night, John didn't get to sleep until 5 a.m. He remained awake, looking out his window, fearing something bad was going to happen. He quit his job a week later. He was deeply traumatized by the experience, notably the strange growl. Now, Lon put a note on here. Note, the host Nick Hunter wondered if the creature John encountered was a, quote, wraith, a gangly, vicious creature seemingly found in creepypasta. John admits that he thought of that years later, but at the time there was no such thing as the rake. It wasn't until years later when he was listening to podcasts that he heard other people's stories, and he thought that it sounded similar to what he encountered in 2005. On a side note, in 2007, John was also visiting family in Arizona. He had stepped outside and observed over his shoulder a rectangle-shaped object. One side of the object light up. The object was blimp-like, but not a blimp. This was witnessed by another person. He does not believe the two events were connected. So again, another awesome encounter or account that we have looked at tonight, courtesy of Lon Strickler, PhantomandMonsters.com. Definitely make sure you guys go to his page and check out the awesome stories that he has there. Let's see. The next one that we have here is the Hill of Fairies. Irish teen spooked by manifestation. So we'll take a look at that one here. All right. An Irish teen gets the fright of his life one night at home during a gale storm. He sees a pale, white, shrouded arm extended into his room. He later finds out that it may have been a fairy vision. So Lon Strickler received this following account. Hello, I grew up on the west coast of Ireland in County Galway. One night, when I was around 16 years of age, I woke up in the middle of a gale, with rain pelting the windows and wind whistling through the cracks. Now on this night, it was only myself, my mother, and my sisters inside the house, as my father was away minding the cattle due to it being calving season. Normally, I'd be helping him out, birthing calves and the like, but not on this night. We had these spotlights to illuminate the outside of the house, and one of these spotlights shone directly up to my window, and even with the curtains closed, it would lighten up the room. The shadows of branches and long blades of grass would project onto the ceiling, and the gale, being what it was, caused a frantic wildness to characterize this night's shadow play. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and listened to the wind roar outside for a short while. In fairness, though, I was busting to relieve myself. So I sat up to take off my blanket and looked over at the door. My view of the door was such that I couldn't from my bed see into the hallway unless the door was wholly ajar. The door was only slightly cracked, but it was open enough to allow the width of a human arm. And there, extending into the room, was just that. The arm was pale, white, and judging by the shape of the hand on the end of it, appeared to be female. It had a classic shroud-like sleeve ending a few inches before the wrist. It waved palm side down for about 5 seconds and then retracted. Now, the gale and the lights and shadows and all that was bearable, even the arm and hand would have been grand enough. I could have pegged it down to sleep paralysis, but Jesus Christ, the way that the arm retracted back into the hallway and the way the door handle moved downwards as the arm retracted and the way the door slammed after, I couldn't breathe. The way the door closed made me sweat. I began to roar and shout and managed to get beside my bedside lamp on and covers off and began running around the room, opening the door of the hallway into nothingness. Not a soul awake in the house besides myself and the ghost. I ran at 16 years of age into my mother's room, roaring my arse off about ghosts, and she woke up and blearily told me to shut up. You'll wake up your sisters. Well, I calmed down and I slept on the floor of my mother's room that night. Now, that house had been built by my parents. No one had died in it. Nothing else even slightly paranormal happened in that house before or since. A few weeks later, though, I was talking to the neighbor, an old alcoholic bachelor who lived in the area his entire life. I told him about the ghost, and his weary smile got wider and he laughed. Well, sure, isn't that bit of land your folks built that house on called Sanak Nasi by the old people of the village? And sure, in Irish, doesn't that mean Hill of the Fairies? So another awesome story there by LonStrickler.com. Don't know how you feel about that one there. That one was kind of creepy with the arm coming through the door. And, you know, if I, even though I have some weird stuff going on here, if I had that, I don't know. I wouldn't stick around this house, that's for sure. So next story that we'll go into that we had picked out here is, let's see. This one here, couple encounters gliding orangutan while driving in North Dakota night, which sounds bananas to me, and we'll see what the story is all about. All right, so reading this one here. A North Dakota couple was driving at night when they observed something floating above them. They both described it as a gliding primate or orangutan. What did they see? I received the following account. Hi, Lon. I was living in Northwest North Dakota in the early mid-2010s when my girlfriend and I had a very strange encounter. I lived in this area all my life, and for most of it, it was an empty and desolate plain. However, around 2012, there was an oil boom, and it caused a lot of people and activity to move into the region. This is not really necessary from a story, but who knows if the presence of people or industry could have attracted the thing that we saw. We were driving down a gravel road one night, going south from a small town of Wild Rose. It was very early in the morning, probably around 3 a.m. I was driving, and my girlfriend was sitting in the passenger seat. We were probably driving around 45 miles per hour as it was loose gravel and it was dark. Out of nowhere, about 100 feet in front of us, I saw something that I had never, ever seen and has not seen since. Floating about 10 feet in the air in the middle of the road, I saw what looked like an orangutan. It was motionless, with one arm positioned over its head, pointing in one direction, and its other arm across its lower portion pointing in the other direction. It also appeared to be glowing. There was a faint ethereal glow emanating from it. As we continued toward it, it glided at an angle into the air and away from the road as we were passing. The last time we glimpsed it, it had floated up to either into a tree or right near it. We continued to drive, and I thought that I was just being creepy. Even though I've never been one to experience hallucinations, I looked at my girlfriend and said, "Did you see that?" And she replied, "Yeah, it looked like a effing monkey." We turned around at the next approach and drove back to the location of the sighting, and there was nothing there. The whole thing sounds absolutely crazy. A motionless, glowing, gliding primate in the middle of an oil field. I've only told one other person about this. The girlfriend and I have since long broken up, but there was never any doubt in our minds about what we saw. My only theory is that it was not a real orangutan, but something that chooses its appearance, and for whatever reason, that is what it had chosen. I was listening to one of the shows about flying humanoids, and the person had mentioned something about gliding creatures. So I figured you were telling my story. So another one submitted to Lon Strickler, PhantomandMonsters.com. That one's a little weird, and the reason why I even say that is because, so you had something that was floating above the car off side of the road, and it appeared to be an orangutan, and you asked the question of why would it be that? Why would it show up as an orangutan? That doesn't even make sense. And then they pointed out the fact that, that could actually be something that just chose to show itself in that form. As we've heard from a lot of other people out there, that some believe that these ETs and cryptids are shapeshifters and can shift their shape into anything that they can imagine, and potentially just happen to choose an orangutan for whatever reason. And that when you think about it like that, that makes it a lot more creepy. So, because if it was a shapeshifter, then what was it? What was the actual entity, right? So that's pretty creepy. So with that being said, let's see, I think we got time for one more. We could probably squeeze one more in. We'll pick this one live on the spot here. We will pick. Let me see here. Let me pick a good one. Okay. Red Eyes in the Sky. Was it Mothman? Let's see. I think we can go with that one. Let me bring it over here. All right. Red Eyes in the Sky. Was it Mothman? Was it a harbinger of Hurricane Katrina? Let's go ahead and check this one out. A group of friends visited Point Pleasant, West Virginia. While on a dark back road, they all observed huge red eyes in the sky. The witness feels that it was a harbinger of Hurricane Katrina. I received the following account. I believe I had a Mothman encounter in August of 2005. I was 19. I visited Point Pleasant, West Virginia with all my friends and fiance. We were just dumb kids being dumb kids. Thought it would be fun to go find the Mothman. We didn't even plan the trip out very much. We borrowed this old tent that belonged to my fiance's father, and I swear to God, hadn't been open since the 70s. When we made it into town, it was already dark. We stopped at a police station, and they were friendly enough and told us where we went down all these creepy back roads, and it seemed so dark and isolated. We were having a good time pretending to scare the crap out of each other as kids do. We were driving down one back road just surrounded by woods. It was completely dark other than the headlights, and we all three saw two enormous red eyes in the sky. I know how it sounds, but it, honest to God, happened, and we could all about have peed ourselves because of how high off the ground they were. We were All three screamed like little girls, and my fiance floored it. After the initial shock and just feeling shaky and unnerved, my fiance recovered and wanted to set up camp. My friend and I thought he was an idiot, and we refused to sleep anywhere near those woods. We ended up sleeping in the car in a hospital parking lot once we were back to civilization. We later found out the directions to the camping spot we got were in around the TNT area. We had no prior information about this. We barely planned at all. We had breakfast at Biscuit World the next morning, and for whatever reason chose not to share our encounter with anyone. I guess we thought no one would believe us if we did. We left a day early since we didn't want to try sleeping in the car in August again. When we got home, Hurricane Katrina had made its way toward the Gulf Coast. It was all over the news. We had listened to mixed CDs the whole trip up and hadn't even been aware of anything going on. It just struck me because a Mothman sighting is said to be the omen of tragedy and misfortune. It's still this crazy story I tell people and they laugh, but what happens stays with me. Be careful what you go looking for, kids. You just might find it. And that is a great way to go ahead and end that segment. Make sure you go show Lon some love, go show him some support over at his website and on his YouTube channel. Let him know that we appreciated the stories here tonight. Devin Sagan, I missed this as well. I'm sorry about that. Did someone say orangutan? Yeah, I know. That's pretty wild, right? But it just goes into that whole shape-shifting narrative, and it would be weird that an ET would choose that to be the thing, or a cryptid would choose that to be the thing to show itself as. I don't know why it would do that, but it'd be pretty freaky to see that, right? And with that being said, like I said, once again, LonStrickler.com. Make sure you guys go and show him some love and support as he has given us the ability to share these stories here on After Hours tonight. So getting in now to the second half of this hour, like I said, this is the last show that we're doing that for After Hours. So it won't be another After Hours show until around August 10th or 11th. So that's going to be a little while that I won't get to see you guys and hang out. And I know we do, so I'll say all this. So we have a lot of fun with the trivia. Some people don't get the trivia. Some people are like, oh, why are we doing trivia? I can understand both sides of the conversation. But I'll tell you, we will be transitioning into a whole new format for radio, which won't allow us to do trivia, right? So what we'll have to do is, new shows are posted to Mothman. Those are shows for Dave this week. So his last day for showing is on Friday, which will be the 19th. So he has this week full of shows, and then he'll be done on that Friday. But the last After Hours show that you'll have is tonight. So let me see. All right, so let's see. Here's what we'll do. We'll go ahead and do what you guys like to do, and we'll just run some trivia for the last part of this show. And that's what I'll leave you with for the few weeks that I'll be away from you guys until we meet again once we come back from this break. So let me switch up the theme here. Get us some good trivia up here. And test your brain cells and kind of see where you're at with this. So let me go ahead and move this out of here. Get up here like this. Okay. But we'll get into some trivia real quick here. I'll go ahead and pull some up. and test your fingers, right? Let's see. Oh, I actually have to get the YouTube chat up as well. So give me just a moment here, guys, while I do that. Just get your fingers ready, kind of exercise your mind, and let's see who comes out victorious tonight. Let me bring up the feed. All right, here we go. All right, turn that down. All right, we got the YouTube chat up now. So we're good here. Okay. All right, let me check that real quick, Deb. Let's see. Okay. No. I don't know that I have it in here, Deb. I don't see it. Yeah, I don't see it, Deb. It's probably in here, but I can't search for it. So if you can resend it, then I'll bring that up. And then for now, I'll grab a few of these that I already have. Okay. All right. So until I get that, we'll run with some of these. We'll go trivia question. First one, what does the acronym UFO stand for? What does UFO stand for? What does UFO stand for? All right. Looks like Bomber got it here. It is unidentified flying object. This is one of the easiest questions you could get. UFO, unidentified flying object. It's what the ETs are in. It's what they're flying in right now. Let me take that off the screen here. And the next question is, okay. In 1947, an event in Roswell, New Mexico became famous for UFO speculation. What they initially reported that it was a disc. What did they then change it to the very next day? They said it was a disc, a crashed disc. What did they change it to the very next day? That is correct. Sadly, they just changed the weather balloon. Like, oh no, we didn't mean crash disc. We meant weather balloon. Well, it was a weather balloon. Yeah. And then they came in 94, or I think 96, right around there, 1996, came back and said, well, actually, it's Project Mogul. So something else. So they lied about a lie. So we know what it was. So that's right, Paramore. We got you. Debbie said you just sent it. So let me see if I can bring it up here. Oh, okay. You sent it to the after hours. Got it. Okay. All right. Got it. Got it, Deb. Got it. All right. So here we go. This is going to have a mix of everything: ufology, pop culture, etc. So here we go. In the movie Carrie, what was the power that she used to move objects? In the movie Carrie, what was the What was the power that she used to move objects? Yes, Bomber. That would be telekinesis. Telekinesis. Correctamundo. All right, let's move on to the next one here. All right. Name the most recognized UFO case from 1997. Probably one of the biggest ones ever when you think about it. UFO case popular in 1997. I do see the correct answer, which would be the Phoenix Lights. And that looks like Van Gogh would have been the first one to say Phoenix Lights. And be just Phoenix, because Phoenix could be the Phoenix Suns, could be the rising of the Phoenix. Let's see. All right, Phoenix Lights, Van Gogh. Congratsky. Let's see. What year did we set out to go to the moon? In what year did we land on the moon, allegedly? What year did we allegedly land on the moon? Allegedly land on the moon. That would be correct, tomorrow, man. It'd be 1969 when we allegedly, miraculously landed on the moon at the end of a decade that President Kennedy promised that we would in a speech back in like 1961. And just so happens we made it by the end of the decade. Maybe not. Maybe not. Depends on where you fall on that. But I won't stay too much on that. Good job, Van Gogh. And let's go to the next one here. Let's go to the next one. Let's see. What famous alien video has never been debunked and looks authentic? What famous alien video has never been debunked and looks authentic? And yeah, Deidre, see, we just don't have the technology anymore. We lost it, right? Tell him, Deidre, see. Exactly. Thank you. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Okay. Yeah. I don't think we got not the alien autopsy, guys. I mean, it could be. I guess maybe that's perception, right? Nope. Let me see. What famous alien video has never been debunked and looks authentic? Maybe there's more than one. I'll give you the answer. Skinny Bob. The Skinny Bob video. So we'll give no one gets that. We'll just move on. Name the sixth planet in our solar system. Sixth furthest away from the sun. What's the sixth planet? The planet sixth furthest distance from the sun. Yep, it'd be Saturn, just like the POS cars, the car manufacturer. Let me see. So Smart Man gets that. Saturn. It is Saturn. Congrats on that, Smart Man. All right, moving on. Let's see. What do we have? What does the IAU stand for? What does the IAU stand for? What does the IAU stand for? I don't see it. All right, I'll go ahead and give the answer on this one. The IAU stands for International Astronomical Union. How many miles away is the moon from Earth? How many miles away is the moon from Earth? Who knows? Yeah, this one is maybe a little tough to get. You probably won't know this number. It's 238,900 miles from Earth. Let's see. Okay, let's see. This one is mythology. In mythology, who condemned Atlas to hold up the Earth over his shoulders? In mythology, who condemned Atlas to hold up the Earth over his shoulders? All right. Looks like we got it. Van Gogh got it with Zeus. It's your guy Zeus. All right, let me see. Nope. Okay, remove that. All right, next question. Okay. What is the cup called that Christ drank from that is said to have powers? If you know this story, who was the It is the Holy Grail. It is the Holy Grail. So Holy Grail would be a Van Gogh first one. I mean, I see you, Lex, but didn't add the L, man. Let me see. Okay. All right, moving on. Let's see, what do we got? What state is Fort Knox in? What state is Fort Knox in? All right, I think I see it here. So Mothman got it first. It is in Kentucky. It's in the state of Kentucky. All right, great job. Let's see. Okay, let me see what we got here. How old is... Wait a minute. Buzz Aldrin isn't alive. How old is Buzz Aldrin? How old would he be, I guess, this year? Buzzy Aldrin. Buzz Aldrin. All right, Paramarv, 94. He'd be 94 this year on an FYI. But he's no longer with us. Rest in peace. Oh, nope. Sorry, not Christine. That was Paramore. Paramore. Great job. All right, let's see. Okay, what town in Arizona did the Travis Walton incident happen? What town in Arizona did the Travis Walton incident happen? Okay, I think I got it here. Who got it here? It's Paramore. Paramore. It is Snowflake. Snowflake, Arizona. All right. Taking a look here. What else do we have here? All right, next question. What does MUFON stand for? What does MUFON stand for? The acronym MUFON. All right. Looks like the Mothman got it. Mutual UFO Network. If you didn't know, now you know. It's the Mutual UFO Network is what MUFON stands for. And let's see. There we go. Right here. It's Mothman. Okay, great job on that. And let's see. Let's see. In the movie Signs, what substance or element defeated the aliens? How did they defeat the aliens in the movie Signs? What eventually killed them all? And maybe something we might have to think about to using against a malevolent presence. What did they use? I do see it here. That is going to be the first person. Okay, that's Simon the Likeable. Welcome, Simon the Likeable. And you got it. It is water. Plain old water. Plain old H2O. All right. And let's see here. What is the name for a being that is half human, half fish that lives in our seas? What is the name for a being that lives in our seas and our waterways, half human, half fish? Yep. I see it right here. Bobber got it. That is going to be a mermaid. All right. Great answer there. Bomber, mermaid it is. And let's see. What do we got here? We'll go with a couple more of these. What is the name of the best vantage point where Bob Lazar took people to see craft over Area 51? And actually, I think it's more accurate would be where's the best vantage point for you to see Area 51 from today. I know Freedom Ridge used to be where you could go, but where can you go now? Where they took that land over. Freedom Ridge, that land was allocated by the government, right? And now you have they pushed you back further, so the only place you can see it is another place. Where is that place? Yeah, they annexed. Exactly. They annexed that land. Somebody in changing. Hold on. It is Tickaboo Peak. Tickaboo Peak. All right, and let's do one more here. Name the race of ETs that are said to live under Mount Shasta. Name the race of ETs that is said to live under Mount Shasta. All right, I think I see it here. J Truth Seeker. Lemurians. All right, so we'll go ahead, tally up what we have here, vote wise. All right, and looks like we have Bomber has 1, 2, 3. Van Gold has 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see, 4. Okay. The Mothman sitting with 1, 2, 3. And Paramorph has 1, 2. Simon the Likeable has 1. J True Seeker has 1. So the winner for tonight is Van Gizold, 24K Van Gold. Put some respect on her name tonight as she goes ahead and wins the pretty much the last trivia. Yeah, it's probably the last time you'll see trivia. So going into the new format, it definitely won't allow for it. So we will figure something out on that. I have a couple ideas that I'm kicking around. But yeah, so go ahead, take the crown, give her accolades, fire emojis, everything that she deserves tonight for pulling this off. Do appreciate you participating. With that being said, let's go ahead and get ready to take a look at the super chatters for tonight. Everyone who participated here. And let me see. I want to thank Aloha Dave, Wes Decker, Kira I Am, Lala Bright, and Deb from Sacramento. Appreciate your support of Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, we're going to go ahead now and get ready to wrap this thing up. So, yeah, it's been great. Definitely look forward to seeing you guys on the other side of the break. Once again, this will be the last show for After Hours until at least the 10th, 11th of August. So hopefully I will see you guys here and there during that time as we go ahead and do what we have to do on the backside. And get ready to bring to you a revived, reformatted, restructured sort of show. Definitely look forward to how that's going to turn out. So with that being said, definitely want to thank you all for tuning your frequencies here to Spaced Out Radio, where we bring you the woo and we own the night. You guys get ready for Dave Scott tomorrow, Monday through Friday, as we get ready to roll into this break, guys. So kick back. We'll see you next time.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio. You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.